What if I told you that true alchemy was never about turning lead into gold, that there are secrets so ancient, so powerful, they only reveal themselves when your soul is ready? And maybe, just maybe, that moment has come now. The magic of alchemy doesn't appear with flashes or grand revelations. It arises in silence, a slight discomfort, almost imperceptible, a strange feeling that something is out of place, as if life had more to offer than empty goals, tired repetitions, and scripted roles. It's like a whisper from within, a calling that doesn't scream but insists. In ancient times, that calling was heard by only a few. Those who followed it weren't looking for fame or power. They entered dark chambers, yes, but not only in the underground of the physical world. They dove within themselves. These were the alchemists, not the caricatured gold makers of popular tales, but quiet seekers. Men and women who understood something that few grasp, that true transformation is internal. To them, lead wasn't just a base metal. It was the symbol of raw, heavy, limited consciousness. And the mission was clear, to transmute that lead into gold, but not the gold of kings, the gold of the soul, the state of clarity, freedom, and inner unity. They knew this transmutation required fire, not just the fire of the furnace, but the fire of loss, of trials, of sleepless nights with no answers, the fire that burns away what's false until only the essential remains. It was in this symbolic heat that the true alchemist was born. Not the one who masters formulas, but the one who finds themselves again in the ashes of their own ego. Authentic alchemy has always been a spiritual path disguised as science. That's why it was hidden, rewritten in symbols, protected by metaphors. Not because it was dangerous, but because it can only be understood by those who have eyes to see and a heart ready to listen. And when that calling touches you, something inside shifts. The world out there stays the same, but the eyes become more alert. The heart starts to remember what it had forgotten, and even without fully understanding, the seeker is already in motion. Gold has always fascinated humanity, but what few understand is that since ancient times, it was never just a metal. For the ancient sages, gold represented that which is eternal, incorruptible, and pure. Something that does not deteriorate over time, does not rust, does not tarnish, does not lose value. A perfect symbol of what the human being can become when awakened. In ancient Egypt, the pharaohs used gold not just as adornment, but as a bridge between the physical and the divine worlds. They believed gold was the flesh of the gods, a sacred metal that carried within it the vibration of immortality. In their tombs, gold was not placed to display power. It was placed as a spiritual seal, as a vibrational shield, as a symbol of passage to a higher plane of existence. It was a reminder that life does not end in death, it merely transmutes. But what most people ignored is that this gold was not sought outside. The true gold of alchemy is invisible to the eyes and precious to the soul. The mystics of the Middle Ages knew this. They understood that the greatest of all transmutations was not turning lead into physical gold, but transforming the lead of consciousness into light, turning the rigidity of the conditioned mind into inner flexibility, turning fear into presence, ignorance into wisdom, pain into strength. This gold that does not shine is not found in banks, vaults, or mines. It silently dwells within the human being. It can only be revealed when the ego melts in the heat of life's trials, when one faces the inner mirror and has the courage to see everything that has been hidden, denied, or forgotten. It is in this process that true alchemy is born. But there is a crucial detail. The human soul, like metals, goes through phases. The ancient alchemists spoke of nigredo, albedo, and rubedo, stages of the alchemical work. First, the blackness of confusion, chaos, and loss of meaning. Then, the whitening of the mind, emotional purification. And finally, rubedo, the red of realization, of the awakened spiritual gold. Each of these stages represents a symbolic death and a rebirth. The alchemist's quest, therefore, was not driven by greed. It was driven by an inner calling, by a yearning to reconnect with what had been lost, the connection to essence. And that essence is indestructible, unchangeable, eternal, like true gold. The gold of consciousness, the gold of the spirit. Few understand this language because while the world chases physical gold, power, fame, recognition, the true seeker turns inward and looks for something far more valuable, the perfection of the soul. A perfection that does not exclude flaws but integrates them, a wisdom that does not reject pain but transforms it, a light that does not blind but reveals. And it was precisely in search of this invisible gold, this silent perfection of the soul, that the ancient masters turned their eyes to a place where the knowledge of the world seemed to have condensed into a single point, Alexandria, a true beacon of wisdom in ancient times, where philosophers, astronomers, mystics, mathematicians, and initiates from various cultures gathered. There, at the crossroads of Greek thought, Egyptian spirituality, and Eastern secrets, one of the most mysterious languages ever created was born. Alchemy. Alexandria was not just a city, it was a portal, a sacred space where knowledge and spirit walked together. The Library of Alexandria, with its thousands of scrolls, was a mirror of the inner universe. Each book kept there was a spark of a greater truth, and many of them were protected by symbols and metaphors that only initiates could decipher. Because true knowledge was never handed over directly. It is veiled, hidden in plain sight, and only reveals itself to those who have eyes to see. It was in this environment that Zosimos of Panopolis emerged, one of the first alchemists to record, in almost enigmatic words, the essence of everything alchemy represents. He spoke of a stone that is not a stone, of an object that everyone knows but no one understands. Zosimos was not describing a simple chemical compound, he was speaking of a spiritual mystery. Of something that can only be reached by those who have already begun the process of inner transmutation. The philosopher's stone, in its symbolic language, was the center of everything, the key to eternal life, the secret of total healing, the meeting point of opposites. But to understand it, one had to grasp something deeper, that everything in the universe has a spiritual correspondence. What is above reflects what is below. What is within manifests outwardly. There is no separation between the visible and the invisible. Alchemy was born to teach this. That is why it was never just a set of formulas, nor a mechanical science. It was a way of seeing the world, a lens that united body and soul, matter and spirit, reason and intuition. A true alchemist did not mix metals to get rich. He mixed symbols, archetypes, elements of nature, and internal states of consciousness. Each substance had a soul. Each reaction represented a stage of the human journey. And so, the esoteric tradition began to spread, silently, protected, camouflaged under myths, works of art, sacred constructions. But its origin was there, on the banks of the Nile, under the sky of Alexandria, where human knowledge knelt before the mystery of existence. The philosopher's stone. And it is at this point in the journey, immersed in the echoes of the esoteric tradition born in Alexandria, that the seeker begins to encounter one of the greatest mysteries of alchemy, the philosopher's stone. Not as a physical object to be discovered in some hidden corner of the world, but as a deep enigma that challenges the common gaze and reveals its true nature only to those who have already begun the inner transformation. The stone was never just a substance. Its name, wrapped in metaphors and paradoxes, is a symbolic key that points to something beyond matter. There is a stone that is not a stone, wrote Zosimos, an object everyone knows but no one truly understands, a symbol that represents the point of union between what seems separate, body and spirit, light and shadow, pain and wisdom. This stone is, in fact, the totality of being. It is not created with reagents or heated in physical furnaces, but is born from integration. When a person stops the inner fight, when they stop rejecting parts of themselves and begin to look courageously at their own shadow, something begins to change. The division disappears, consciousness expands, and in that moment, what once was conflict becomes understanding. What was heavy becomes presence. The search for the stone is then the search for oneself, but for a complete self, not an idealized one, the one who recognizes both light and darkness within, the one who accepts their imperfections without getting lost in them, the one who understands that they don't need to be perfect, but whole. And to make this even clearer, I will share with you a short story that illustrates what we are learning. It is said that once a young man traveled to a village high in the mountains to find a wise man who, according to legend, kept the philosopher's stone. He climbed steep trails, faced cold and hunger, until he finally found a small stone house where the old master lived. Eager, the young man asked, "Master, do you really have the philosopher's stone? The one that turns anything into gold? I came from far away to see it." The old man looked at him in silence, picked up an old mirror that was on the table and handed it to the boy. "Here it is," he said simply. The young man was confused. "But this is just a mirror." The old man smiled and replied, "Yes, but if you have the courage to look deeply into it and not look away from what you find, you will see that everything you need to transform is there. The stone is not a thing. It is the moment when you stop searching outside and begin to recognize the power of transformation within yourself." The boy, disappointed, left. But years later, after going through losses, falls, lessons, and silence, he remembered that encounter. He picked up an ordinary mirror, looked sincerely at his own reflection, and in that instant, he understood. The stone had always been there, but he had to lose himself to find it. The Codex of Symbols. By understanding that the true stone is the one born from the union of everything we are, a new door opens before the seeker, and this door does not reveal itself through clear words or linear reasoning. It opens through a different, ancient and profound language that speaks directly to the soul, the language of symbols. The ancient alchemists knew that certain knowledge could not be explained, only felt. They knew that the logical mind, conditioned by categories and limits, was not capable of accessing the highest mysteries. That's why they hid their secrets between the lines of images. Not out of fear, but out of wisdom. They understood that a true symbol does not give ready-made answers. It provokes, it unsettles, it invites you to look within. In the old alchemical manuscripts, we find strange, sometimes unsettling figures. A being with the body of both man and woman. A green lion devouring the sun, a black crow perched on a tomb. These images seem absurd at first glance, but they are not there by accident. Each one is a key. Each one represents a stage of the inner journey. The hermaphrodite, for example, represents the union of opposites within us. The masculine and the feminine, reason and intuition, strength and surrender. When these polarities stop competing and begin to collaborate, something new is born, the integrated being. The green lion is the raw energy of the inner nature, which needs to be tamed and understood before it can become wisdom. And the black crow, it represents symbolic death, the end of an old identity, the moment when something within us must die so that the new can be born. These images are not just illustrations, they are mirrors of the psyche. They speak to the oldest and most intuitive part of us, where logic cannot reach. That's why two people can look at the same symbol and see different things. Because the symbol responds to the inner state of the one who contemplates it. It is a reflection of the individual process of the one who encounters it. The alchemist who drew these images was not trying to teach a concept. He was offering an experience, an invitation, a dive, because when you contemplate a symbol sincerely, without hurry and without judgment, something starts to move inside. The symbol touches where words cannot reach. It ignites forgotten memories, awakens silent understandings, and brings back dormant parts of the soul. That's why the ancients said that symbols are medicine. They heal because they reveal. They heal because they reorganize internal chaos without telling you what to do. They simply show. And in that silent showing, something aligns. Something returns to the center. By diving into the universe of symbols and understanding that each image is a bridge to the soul, the seeker begins to realize that the world around also speaks this same language. And then they start to look at places with new eyes. Old buildings no longer seem like just constructions. They reveal themselves as open books, written in stone, silent but alive. It is at this point that the path leads to the Gothic cathedrals, where alchemy hid in plain sight, visible to those whose eyes were ready to see. The great cathedrals of the Middle Ages, like Notre Dame, were not built only to host religious celebrations. They were designed with precision, full of meaning and sacred geometry, created to transmit wisdom through form, light, and shadow. Every stained glass window, every sculpture, every arch had a spiritual function. Nothing was there by chance. Beneath the visible Christian cloak, there are hidden layers. Among apostles and saints, strange figures discreetly appear on facades and columns. A woman with a shield where a salamander burns in flames, a man holding a flask as if in the middle of an experiment. Creatures that challenge traditional iconography and point to another reality that coexisted within the same structure, the alchemical reality. The salamander, for example, was considered a creature of fire, capable of surviving flames without being consumed. For the alchemists, it symbolized the spirit that passes through the heat of transformation without being destroyed. The flask in the hands of an unknown figure is not a decorative detail. It is the alchemical vessel, the container where the soul is purified. It is also the human body, where inner transmutation takes place. These details were not inserted innocently. They are part of a secret language that survived amid oppression, camouflaged under official sacredness, because there was a wisdom that could not be taught openly, a wisdom that was hidden, not to be forgotten, but to be protected, guarded, waiting for the right moment when the right eyes would find it. Between the cross and the crucible, heresy, persecution, and illumination. And when the seeker realizes that the temple is also within, that the stone and the fire dwell in their very essence, they begin to understand why this knowledge had to be hidden. Truth, when set free, always threatens the structures that feed on ignorance. Alchemy, with its symbolic language, its spiritual autonomy, and its promise of inner transformation, became a threat to the powers that controlled not only bodies, but also souls. In the Middle Ages, the Church dominated the narrative about the divine. Salvation was sold as something external, mediated by dogmas and hierarchies. Alchemy, on the other hand, said that the divine existed within each human being, that the path to God was not made of blind obedience, but of courage, silence, and transformation. That could not be tolerated. Monks, hermits, and scholars who delved into alchemical texts were watched, denounced, and condemned. Roger Bacon, one of the brightest thinkers of the 13th century, was silenced. His experiments, which united science, philosophy, and spirituality, challenged the narrow worldview the clergy wanted to preserve. Imprisoned for heresy, he spent his final years confined, accused of seeking too much knowledge. Others were less fortunate. Many died by fire. But it is here that the paradox reveals itself most powerfully, because the fire that burns is also the fire that purifies. In the alchemical view, fire was never just destruction. It was the great agent of transmutation, the heat that separates truth from falsehood, the flame that dissolves illusion and reveals the inner gold. Persecuted alchemists knew this. They knew the path was risky, that seeking truth meant giving up security, that looking within required dying while still alive. Not a physical death, but the death of the mask, the death of the ego, the death of everything that binds the soul to the lie of the world. The cross and the crucible became, then, symbols of the same process. The cross represented the pain of human existence, the trials, the judgments, the crossing. The crucible, in turn, was the vessel of suffering that transforms, where the soul is placed, heated, tested, and finally purified. The true alchemist accepted this fate, not out of a desire for martyrdom, but from the knowledge that their quest was sacred. Because more than transforming metals, they sought to free themselves, and there is no liberation without courage. There is no revelation without passing through fire. And it is precisely in this setting, where the fire of judgment mixes with the fire of revelation, that figures emerge who seem to walk through time with a different light in their eyes. alchemists who not only survived the flames, but left traces of something many would call impossible. Among them, two names echo with mysterious force: Nicholas Flamel and Paracelsus. Flamel, the silent scribe of Paris, lived an apparently ordinary life. He copied manuscripts, lived discreetly, but carried a secret. For decades, he immersed himself in hermetic texts, trying to decipher symbols that seemed impenetrable, until, according to ancient accounts, he found the path to the great work. In the year 1382, he is said to have achieved the transmutation of mercury into gold, not just a material achievement, but the mark of a completed spiritual transformation. What makes the story even more intriguing is not the reports of wealth, but what he did with it. Instead of flaunting, Flamel and his wife began to fund hospitals, churches, and shelters. They did not seek power, they sought to serve. Their gold became bread, healing, and refuge. And then, mysteriously, they vanished. Centuries later, there were still those who claimed to have seen them, showing no signs of aging, with a different light in their eyes, as if the stone had done more than transform metals, as if it had freed the soul from time. While Flamel walked along the edges of light, Paracelsus ventured into the most dangerous realms of shadow. A physician, philosopher, and rebel, Paracelsus challenged not only the medicine of his time, but also nature itself. He claimed that the secrets of life could be revealed, that creation was not exclusive to the gods, and that man, if he attained full understanding of matter and spirit, could generate life. This is how the homunculus emerged, a creature created artificially in a laboratory, according to him, through a complex alchemical process involving human elements, hidden forces, and symbolic manipulations of vital energy. But what shocked people was not just the idea of generating life outside the human womb, it was the fact that this life would have no soul. The return of the eternal and the inner stone. And when the world seemed to have left behind the echoes of alchemy, when the furnaces had gone cold and the symbols were hidden under the dust of forgetfulness, something surprising happened. In the silence of a mind that would forever change the history of science, the hidden flame of the great work was still burning. Isaac Newton, the man who explained gravity, who created calculus, who revealed invisible laws that govern the universe, secretly held aside few dared to explore. For years, alongside his scientific discoveries, Newton immersed himself in alchemical manuscripts. He copied ancient formulas, translated hermetic symbols, and wrote over 1 million words on transmutation, spiritual essence, and the philosopher's stone. His laboratory was not only a space of reason, it was also the realm of the invisible. But there is a price when you cross boundaries without a map. Newton began to show strange signs: an emotional breakdown, confused letters, baseless accusations, insomnia, delusions. Many believe he was poisoned by the mercury he used in his experiments, but perhaps the poisoning was also symbolic. Perhaps it was the weight of trying to unite two conflicting worlds, the rational and the mystical, science and soul, the visible and the invisible. This fragmentation reveals something deep. When the mind touches mystery without preparation, without integration, it can get lost, because it's not just about knowledge. It's about being ready. Alchemy, like any true spiritual path, demands more than intellect. It demands presence, balance, an open heart, and when that is lacking, even the greatest of geniuses can find themselves facing the abyss. But the gold Newton sought was not lost. It simply went dormant for a few more centuries, until in another time, with a different language, it was rediscovered. And that happened not in a laboratory, but on the therapy couch. Not in formulas, but in dreams. Carl Gustav Jung, one of the greatest names in modern psychology, began to notice something strange in the reports of his patients. Strange symbols, archetypal images, patterns that didn't seem to come from personal experience. And in investigating these contents, Jung came across the ancient alchemical treatises. He realized those images weren't fantasies. They were expressions of the soul. They were manifestations of the unconscious. For Jung, the philosopher's stone was not a substance. It was the symbol of psychic wholeness, the self, the deepest and most integrated part of the being, the one that brings together light and shadow, reason and emotion, instinct and spirit, and the alchemical journey was nothing more than a symbolic map of individuation, the process of becoming whole. He understood that the alchemist's laboratory was a reflection of the inner world, that each mixed element represented an aspect of the psyche, that transmutation wasn't only metallic, but psychological, healing emotional wounds, recognizing unconscious patterns, integrating denied parts. All of this was living alchemy. What the ancients expressed in images, Jung translated into therapeutic language, but the heart of the message was the same. The true work is not outside, but within. The gold is not in the world, but in awakened consciousness, and the stone only reveals itself at the exact moment the seeker stops searching and starts seeing, because in the end, everything returns to the origin. The search for gold, for knowledge, for the divine, has always been the search for oneself. And when that truth emerges, there is no longer separation between alchemy, spirituality, and psychology. Everything becomes one, the awakening of the soul. And before you go, I need to tell you something important. A special video has been prepared, made with great care, to show you how to apply these alchemical secrets on your real path, right now, in today's world. So don't leave just yet. Click the video that's appearing on the screen now, and let's meet there. I'll see you on the other side.